Jonah Valent's phone showed a voicemail dated exactly 24 hours in the future. He tapped the glowing play icon. His own voice came through the speaker, tight and breathless, warning him not to answer the door. Before the recording ended, someone knocked from the other side of his apartment door. Jonah lowered the phone and stared at the motionless security chain. Only minutes earlier, the city apartment had been quiet. Jonah, an emergency dispatcher, had returned from a job built around clocks, recorded calls, and warnings that could not be ignored. Now his phone displayed a message that should not exist. He compared its timestamp with the time on the wall clock, closed the voicemail app, and restarted the phone. The future date remained. So did the recording in his voice. The knocking came again, 3 measured impacts that shook the door in its frame. Jonah approached without touching the lock and looked through the peephole. The hallway beyond appeared empty under the ceiling lights. Remembering the warning, he stepped back and waited. No one spoke. After several minutes, the knocking stopped, and the elevator at the end of the hall gave a soft electronic chime, even though its doors never opened. The warning seemed to have worked. Jonah had not answered the door, and whatever had knocked was gone. Yet the phone vibrated in his hand before he could decide what to do next. A second future voicemail had appeared. Jonah started a screen recording, placed the phone beside the wall clock, and played the message. His voice predicted that the apartment would lose power, down to the exact second shown on the recording. Jonah treated the prediction like an emergency call that needed verification. He switched on every lamp, checked the breaker panel, and watched the clock while the phone recorded both its face and the lit room. At the predicted second, every bulb went black. The refrigerator hum died, the digital displays vanished, and the apartment fell silent. The battery-powered phone kept recording. Its screen captured the clock's second hand stopping at the precise moment named in the voicemail. He had answered a clear question. The first message was not a corrupted timestamp or a recording made by someone imitating him. The warning knew an event before it happened. Yet avoiding the door had been followed by the blackout prediction, and preparing for the blackout had brought the messages closer together. The first had waited in his voicemail. The second arrived while he was holding the phone. Each warning offered Jonah a narrow way around one danger, but using that warning opened the way to something worse. When the power returned, Jonah tried the practical response. He saved the screen recording, deleted both voicemails, disabled incoming calls, and placed the phone in airplane mode. The signal indicators disappeared. Seconds later, the speaker gave the same voicemail tone. A third message appeared without a call, and it began playing before Jonah touched the screen. His own recorded voice said that Jonah had caused the messages by trying to escape them. The apartment reacted as the message played. The wall clock resumed with a sharp click, although its second hand now lagged behind the phone. The hallway elevator chimed again, closer and louder through the door. Jonah turned the phone face down, but his voice continued through the speaker. Deleting the warnings did not stop them. Cutting the connection did not stop them. Every attempt to escape became part of the sequence that produced the next message. Jonah examined the call information attached to the recordings instead of listening again. The route ended at a public phone booth that had already been disconnected and was scheduled for demolition. He checked the trace twice. Both times the record pointed to the same deadline. The booth had no working service, yet it was listed as the origin of voicemails dated 1 day beyond Jonah's present. He went to the booth before midnight with his phone and the saved screen recording. The booth stood behind demolition barriers, its glass streaked with grime, and its receiver hanging above a metal shelf. No dial tone came from the earpiece. Jonah set his phone beside the dead keypad and waited while the minute display approached midnight. The city traffic thinned, leaving only the buzz of a nearby streetlight and the faint movement of plastic tape against the barriers. At exactly midnight, the disconnected booth rang, its display lit with Jonah Valen's number. The sound struck the glass walls and repeated before Jonah lifted the receiver. Nothing about the earlier warnings had offered a safe outcome. They had only provided brief opportunities to choose which danger to face. Now the booth gave him one more, a live connection between the place sending the messages and the person who had received them. Jonah's work had trained him to act on warnings because ignoring one could cost someone everything. The recordings had turned that duty against him. He wanted to believe his future voice was protecting him, but the third message had made the consequence visible. Obeying each warning helped create the next. To break the pattern, Jonah would have to sacrifice the protection the messages offered and tell his earlier self to face whatever waited at the door and whatever followed the blackout. He pressed the booth's recording control and spoke into the receiver. The message was brief. His earlier self had to ignore every warning, including this one. The booth display flickered as he recorded. and Jonah's number vanished between flashes. He was using the only stable rule the messages had demonstrated. A future warning could change an earlier decision, but every attempt to secure a safe result created another warning. He could not choose safety. He could only use the narrow opening to refuse the entire chain. When Jonah released the control, the booth stopped ringing. The streetlight steadied, and the receiver went dead against his ear. The timeline shifted without changing the booth around him. Jonah remembered receiving the first voicemail and refusing to answer the door. At the same time, he remembered a version in which those warnings had never guided his choices. Both sets of memories remained, overlapping even though only one could match the phone in his hand. The next morning, Jonah stood in his apartment under working lights and opened his voicemail. The inbox contained no future recordings. The saved screen capture was gone as well. His phone showed no trace of the warning about the door, the predicted power failure, or the message blaming his escape. Yet Jonah could still repeat each warning, remember the empty hallway through the peephole, and hear the disconnected booth ringing at midnight. The immediate pattern appeared to have ended, but one last detail emerged later. At 2:11 a.m., Jonah's phone woke on its own. The voicemail app opened without a touch, and a new recording began beneath a timestamp dated tomorrow. No incoming call appeared, no voice had spoken yet. The timer simply continued to climb. The disturbing question is not only what happened to Jonah Valen, it is whether the final warning describes a danger that ended, or a method the danger now uses to find the next person. On Jonah's phone, the red recording bar kept moving beneath a date that had not happened yet.